And now I am really, really excited to introduce this person who I've known for, a long time. I don't even know how far back, Caitlin, but we live in the same community in Waterloo. And Caitlin MacGregor first came out of, I kind of think just she was one of the first female founders that kind of came into the big scene, and people started talking about what was going on before a lot of women were doing this. So you're a true leader, and you've opened up a lot of doors for people, and you've shown the way. So now I'll do the official invite about you. So I'd like to start our first founder chat by introducing an exceptional founder, Caitlin MacGregor, who is the founder of Plum. Plum began as an extraordinary idea in 2012 to commercialize the extensive body of academic research in industrial organizational psychology to help companies reveal people's true potential. It's just a fantastic concept. Plum raised a $4.2 million seed round in October 2019, just months before the pandemic hit, and then built a brand new talent management platform that launched in October of 2020. In just 6 months since that launch, Plum has won multi-year enterprise deals that include international rollouts with the likes of Sitel, Whirlpool, and a top 5 US bank. Welcome, Caitlin.
Thank you so much for having me. And it is great to see your face. It has been far too long in lockdown and not seeing members of the community. So I really appreciate this opportunity to talk to you and get to talk to everybody today.
Yeah. Oh, gosh. Yeah. We're really excited to hear what you're going to tell us. So I'd like to start asking you to tell us about your journey and how did Plum go from an idea to a company disrupting HR?
So my very first job out of university, I was hired to build a social enterprise from the ground up. My boss hired me to build a company from nothing and basically got out of my way, handled the finance and sales, and I built this business from scratch. And I realized in that moment that my true calling, the thing that I'm exceptional at, is building something from nothing. And, I look back and go, what happens if that person had not seen the potential in me? How long would it have taken me to realize that I was an entrepreneur? But I really lucked out in that my first job was the thing I was meant to do. And I was, there were no barriers. The sky was the limit, and built the company successfully over 3 years. But I didn't want to stay in that industry. And so I ended up getting hired by an educational technology company out of Toronto that was looking to start up the US branch of their ed tech company. And so I went down to New Hampshire, and I was seeing an executive coach at the time, part of, being 27 and building a business from scratch and newly married. I had turned into this crazy workaholic. And I was a martyr. If I got hit by the bus, the whole business would collapse. And I, very early in my career, were developing bad habits. And so a friend said I definitely needed to see an executive coach. And I had been getting coaching for about a year before going down to New Hampshire. And I went to make my first hire, and my executive coach said, if you screw up your first hire, it's going to be a loss of $300,000 on your business. And so, not wanting to make a mistake, I ended up using a psychometric assessment. So an assessment to test for people's, personality and their cognitive ability, to basically be able to assess if people were going to, be top performers, whether or not they were going to stay. And I was able to pay this executive coach an extraordinary amount of money to be a consultant, but we ended up using this assessment that he had developed while he was at Harvard. And we were able to screen, every single person that applied for the job before even looking at a resume. And we just kept, over 2.5 years, finding these incredible diamonds in the rough. People I never would have interviewed, let alone hired, if it hadn't been for this data talking about, their potential to excel long-term in the role. And, these are people that were waitresses and high school students and people that had, left college to join the circus, like just, fantastic diamonds in the rough that I just never would have found before. And so I was just started my family and looking for an opportunity to come back to Canada. I'd already built 2 businesses for other people. So it was time to really do it for myself. And my co-founder and I really saw an opportunity to, democratize access to this highly predictive data. How could we take, something that was often, utilized as a consulting service and often run by academics, and, how do we make this data actionable by all business owners to help them succeed? How do we take this highly predictive science and marry it with technology to allow it to scale and have a positive user experience? So we started the company a decade ago now with this idea of wrapping technology around it. Realized, took us about almost 3 years to realize that we really needed to own our own intellectual property. We needed to build our own assessment in-house in order to have full control, be able to constantly iterate and make adjustments. And so we launched in 2015 as Plum, and we're now 33, 34 employees, with the vast majority of people based in Kitchener-Waterloo, but we now have employees in BC and Quebec. And we now have this cohort of people that have, our sales team is based out of Texas now. I say it because it's kind of a fluke that it's happened that way. We've got an employee in New Hampshire and one in New York. And so we've kind of grown to be this diverse team spread out across North America. But it's been a long and difficult decade. And I feel like, in this post-pandemic world, we're finally now in a place where the market is interested in what we're doing. I feel like we were a little too early with our message, and excited now that it seems like the market's ready for the disruption that we're bringing.
Well, you were one of the first companies looking at this type of working with people and companies and how to match them up. Like, nobody talked about stuff like that 10 years ago. Just you.
Thank you. It was interesting. There were lots of legacy assessment companies, like really old, big players, and they had kind of dominated it. And so being a new company, it took a long time before we could kind of cut through the noise. I think that was one of the earliest challenges, is how do you just cut through the noise? And then I think the next challenge is that not every industry is great at adopting innovative technology. HR, not always the most, jumping on the bandwagon and trying something innovative. And so it's been a long journey. But it's, one of the things is when I started, because I'm a software as a service platform, there were lots of examples of companies in 3 years, having these multi-million-dollar exits or raising multi-million dollars. And I did a lot of, because I didn't know what success looked like, I did a lot of my own pattern matching of, am I truly successful? What has other people done, and in how much time, and where their sales are? And I constantly was measuring myself to everybody else, and assuming that if I didn't have an overnight success in 3 years, and I didn't have all of these investors throwing money at me, that somehow I wasn't being as successful as my peers. And there's a lot of talk about, are you just a walking zombie? Should you even keep going, or are you just on life support? And it was really hard, because certain things in our business were going very, very well, but other things took a really, really long time. And I really beat myself up along the way, constantly thinking that we weren't performing like we should. And now in hindsight, I literally was on global TV on Saturday. I got to point to my kids on live TV and say, look, that's Scotiabank talking about Plum. That's mommy being interviewed. I'm on real live TV, like I've earned it, but I didn't see the journey along the way. I didn't think that I was being successful along the way, because I was constantly comparing myself to everybody else that was doing it faster, doing it better, getting more recognition. And that's sometimes really hard to not know what success looks like. My co-founder and I are in different peer CEO groups, for example, where he's in a peer VP of product group and I'm in CEO groups. And we find that it's really hard to even benchmark where we are exactly at this company, because there's lots of things that are very mature about our organization, lots of great statistics, but other things we're still developing, things that we're still behind on. And so it's really hard if you don't have a true peer. When you're doing all of that comparison, that apples to apples, it can be really hard to know if you're doing well, unless you've done it before, unless you know exactly what success looks like. And I think that's my greatest lesson learned, is that it's hard, because if it was easy, everyone would have been doing it. And if there was a roadmap with exactly what success looks like, everybody would be following that roadmap. So it's a lonely journey, knowing if you are being successful or not. And the only way that you really know if you're successful is when you get to look over your shoulder and go, I did that.
And I
appreciate that you think I was successful this whole time. I would not have felt that way if we were.
Hey, listen, your secret's safe with me. I'm not going to tell anybody. Your secret's safe. So I'm going to ask you one more question. I'm watching our time because I think it's really important for you to speak to this. So Caitlin, you're a regular speaker for events focused on women entrepreneurs, and you've been, one of you're a trailblazer, right? And you're selected by Springboard Enterprises NYC as one of the top 10 businesses led by women. Has your gender affected your journey as an entrepreneur? And what advice or learning do you share with other women who want to become founders of their own businesses? It's a big question.
So I love that you said right before I got on, we've had a lot of bad news. It'd be nice to have some good news. So here's the good news. There is finally an understanding that we have to invest in diverse leaders in order to get more representation. So there are more angel investor groups that are focusing on investing in women. There's more grants that take into consideration that there are these other barriers. And so they're trying to bridge that gap with extra grants and government money. And I took advantage of a lot of those, and they definitely make a difference. Again, people will say, oh, well, that's only for people that can't raise a big amount of money on their own, or, it is harder for women, still is 10 years later. It's getting better, but it's still hard. But there are people that are interested in supporting. And so there's this kind of wave where there's lots of ways to leverage if you have a diverse background. So, I get asked to speak more often. They don't want my co-founder. They don't want my chief revenue officer. They're white men. They want me. So I lean into that and take every opportunity that's given to me. If there's extra funding, I take every opportunity. So I take the opportunities, and there are a lot of them. But the bottom line is that as human beings, we are risk adverse. And the way with any decision we make as humans to de-risk the decision is to subconsciously match a pattern of what we think success is. And I just gave a whole speech of it's really messed up, those measurements of success. But the problem is that as a woman, I speak differently. My cadence, my tone, my levels of enthusiasm, my priorities, what I value. There are things that are just innately different about how I represent myself than, a 26-year-old white male in a hoodie. And so there are subtle signals that I trigger. And then because it was harder for me earlier, it took me longer to get to certain points. I raised less money at lower valuations, which took less time, which took more time to get to the next milestone. And so all of those start being signals that, well, if it was really successful, she would have raised faster. She would have raised more money. Her valuation would have been higher. So these things that have been holding me back then add up and hold back and hold back. So that lack of fitting this perfect de-risk pattern, because I'm a woman, and then if I had other diversity metrics, those would be other friction points as well. And those little friction points make it harder to get the yes for whatever you're trying to do. And that, that's a reality. But the only way we change it is we keep pushing until we have equal representation of what success looks like, that we become the new pattern that people want to invest in.
Equal representation of what success looks like. Have you got that printed out somewhere? Is it on a t-shirt? That is so true. And again, you're giving us more of an, kind of a positive uptake on things that are starting to slowly change for women founders and women to find money. What's your advice? We've got 2 minutes left. What's your advice to a woman sitting there right now, listening to you, and she needs to go for some funding? Give me a 2-minute blurb.
So there is a lot of government funding out there. Absolutely apply for it. There are great hubs of information, Innovation Guelph or Communitech or government organizations. They know how to navigate. They know who to talk to. You're not alone. So use those to get your foot in the door and pointed in the right direction. A lot of the times they're not announced what's available. They kind of be like, oh, we have a batch of money. Who can we give it to? So forming those relationships early so that they know to then direct it towards you, joining programs that invest in small businesses so that you can use the credibility of that program to stand out from the crowd when applying for money. These are all great strategies. But at the end of the day, the one thing I wish I had spent more time on is sales. Sales solves everything. And so if you are not a great salesperson, but you are leading your organization, tough. The sooner you can become a great salesperson, the better. It took me far too long to be the one selling. And that really does fix everything. And that is my key advice is sell, get damn good at it. You can learn anything. If I can learn to raise $11 million of financing over the last decade, and that's without grant money, investment, so it's probably been like 15 or 18 of all in. If I can learn how to do that, you can learn to be a sales rep too. It's just another thing you have to do to be good at this journey.
Wow, that was great. Great way to end. And, we're just going to follow you and see what you do next, because you've got a lot of exciting things happening right now, Caitlin. And thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to be following your journey with a lot of excitement. And man, it's good to see you again.
Good to see you too. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day. Bye.
Thank you, Caitlin. Wow, what a powerhouse.